There are many ways to tell the story of the sunken crown, and my previous video on the topic is just one of them. The crown was worn by a forgotten king who ruled over a devout kingdom, the people of which built their city and faith around a great slumbering dragon. But all things come to an end, and the tragic fate of the sunken city makes for a really powerful tale. This video will help you to craft your own story about the city of the Sanctum, though if you want to hear my story, then prepare to cry and click the link on the screen. I really recommend you watch that video first. I actually use some storytelling talent rather than just read item descriptions, whereas in this video I'll be exploring some really interesting concepts that couldn't quite make it into that video. The Dragon Talon tells you that deep below the earth, behind a door locked from the inside, is a magnificent city built for a great slumbering dragon. After the Rotten, you come across this curious statue that warps you deeper into the Black Gulch. This statue raises a lot of questions for you, so let's question it. By the way, these bevels around the edge of the video indicate when I'm entering speculation territory. So, firstly, what is this statue? Well, it reminds you of the one in the Shrine of Winter, so why is it here as well? The design is curious. There appear to be 3 headless serpents spiraling around it. It reminds you of the serpents in Dark Souls 1. Perhaps they had their heads removed to mask their identity. All that aside though, it seems that these statues appear to take you to the realms of fallen kings, and we'll be sure to find one in the Old Iron Keep, and return to the one in the Shrine of Winter for the next 2 DLCs. And secondly, you think, where am I warping to? So this seems easily explained, as the statues seem to take you to a related location. Most importantly though, when are we warping to? What time period? It's worth wondering whether we're actually going back in time or not, but I think that we're staying in the present. After all, we're going into a ruined kingdom that has been untouched for a long, long time. Once this was a great kingdom, but as the eternal Sanctum key states, it is now filled with devilish creatures that ensure no trespasser shall cause offense. So what is our goal here? Well, as stated by From, our job is to retrieve Vendrick's crowns. This implies one of 2 things. 1, Vendrick had the crowns and lost them, or 2, Vendrick toppled the kingdoms but couldn't secure the crowns. And I personally believe the latter. It seems like Vendrick succeeded in toppling kingdoms such as this one, but something, or someone, stopped him from retrieving the crowns of the kings. So to get to the bottom of this, let me take you back to the city before it was destroyed. Long ago, there was a dragon sleeping in the depths below the Black Gulch. People came to worship him and built a city around him to worship his magnificence. This was a city built on faith, and it shows. The bonfire warps almost all have reference to prayer, and Focus Souls tells us that development of sorceries was stunted in Shulva as they were considered taboo. The people were also great craftsmen, and this shows in the architecture of the city as well as in artifacts such as the puzzling sword. The dragon's name was Sin, and just as people came to worship him, others came to covet him. The Drakeblood Knights. According to the Drakeblood Greatsword, fresh dragon blood was believed to be sacrosanct. The Drakeblood Knights believed that by bathing in the dragon's blood, they could become omniscient and transcend their own existence. The leader of the knights was named Yorg. According to Yorg's spear, Yorg defeated the sunken king who ruled over the city and pierced Sin, the sleeping dragon, in order to claim his blood. Inside the chest of Sin, you'll actually notice a giant spear, Yorg's spear. But Sin, the slumbering dragon, immediately awoke when Yorg pierced him, and from his wound spewed forth a poisonous fog that blanketed the city in death. Yorg disappeared into the Eternal Sanctum, and nothing more was heard from the people that worshipped the dragon. So now your question is, who are the Drakeblood Knights? Well, we know the Drakeblood Knights crave dragon blood and the knowledge that comes with it. This reminds us of another one who craved dragons, and his name was Vendrick, King of Drangleic. There are 2 conclusions you draw from this. Firstly, a lust for dragons is something replicated amongst many kingdoms in the Souls games, as dragons are seen as creatures that hold answers, and this might just be because they were the first beings on Earth. Just as Vendrick decided to experiment and create an ancient dragon to answer his questions, the Drakeblood Knights could have also come to the same conclusion, but decided to kill a dragon instead. Theory number 2, and this is the theory I choose to believe, is that Vendrick could have sent the Drakeblood Knights to kill Sin, as he could have been curious about dragons. So this is actually backed up in-game when you look at the Ring of Yorg, who was the leader of the Drakeblood Knights. This crest on this ring resembles the Drangleic crest, although it is a little bit blurred. We find most Drakeblood Knights within the Sanctum itself, the area designed to house the dragon. The knights invaded the dragon's home, but when their leader woke the dragon by stabbing him through the chest, the Sanctum crumbled and the knights were trapped within. And there is something sinister within the Sanctum with them. The king is dead, killed by Yorg. The dragon is awake and escapes the Sanctum to sleep wherever he pleases in this crumbled city. But deep within, before the dragon's resting place, is Ilana, the squalid queen. So what do we know about Ilana? Well, she is a squalid queen, and squalid means extremely dirty or unpleasant, especially as a result of poverty or neglect. It can also mean a lack of moral standards, although this is more of an aside. She clearly represents poverty, filth, and neglect, even summoning beings composed of muck and filth to assist her. She's very similar in appearance to Nashandra, who is the Dark Queen of Drangleic, and it's likely she performs a similar role in terms of bringing down the kingdom. Her axe description reveals that she is a fragment of Manus, as long ago the abyss dissipated, but fragments remained. Over time, these fragments reformed in ways that hinted at humanity's true nature, and I've looked over the DLC notes, and the description of Ilana states that she is gathering souls from the sleeping dragon. This is also hinted at by her soul, which says that she is slowly amassing souls for the coming day of vengeance. So what day of vengeance would that be? I believe that the queens are looking to get revenge for the day their father was destroyed. Long ago, Manus, father of the abyss, was destroyed by an undead who seek to stop him from spreading his darkness. Manus dissipated into fragments, and we know these fragments formed into the queens. The day of vengeance could well be something that all the queens are craving. So are the queens working together? It's possible. Ilana guards a crown, which, according to Vendrick, is needed to activate the Throne of Want. By activating the Throne of Want, we can link the fire anew, which is something that the queens, composed of dark, probably don't want. Also, we are being told that we are retrieving Vendrick's crowns, so it's likely that Vendrick knows about these queens, and if he knows about the queens, then it could be that they're working together. That's my take on it anyway. Ilana's most notable quote occurs when you interrupt her singing for the first time.
You were not deserving of the mire.
We were not worthy of the mire. What does that mean? A mire is a stretch of swampy or boggy ground, which, I think, is a reference to Ilana's entire being. She exists in a kingdom that is decaying and rotten, and my most literal interpretation of this phrase is that we were not worthy of the mire that she's creating, so she's going to kill us now instead. Another interpretation of this phrase is a bit deeper. A mire is a complicated or unpleasant situation from which it's difficult to extract yourself. As a queen of poverty, she represents a mire. And if we're not worthy of a mire, it might indicate that she takes a certain pride in being born of poverty. I'm reaching a bit if I try and carry this any further, but I think it's really interesting to note the wordplay on display. Another take on Ilana relates to the rest of the lore of the Sunken Crown in general. Some believe that the kingdom is entirely separate from Drangleic, and that the queen is angry at the Drakeblood Knights for destroying her kingdom. I tend to make a lot of links to Drangleic because there are a lot of links, but also because it helps in fleshing out the lore of other characters like Vendrick and Nashandra. You can choose to believe that the Sunken City is entirely separate from Drangleic though, and if you want, you could just think of the Sunken City as another cycle. Just like Vendrick had an evil queen, the Sunken King had an evil queen. Just like Vendrick seeked the power of dragons, so too did the Drakeblood Knights. Just like Nashandra pitted Vendrick against the giants to ruin his kingdom, Ilana could have pitted the Drakeblood Knights against her own kingdom. There are many valid ways of looking at things, so I really encourage you to do so. But next, we should come to discuss NPCs. The first that comes to mind is the terrible boss, comprised of 3 NPCs wearing really signature armor sets. So one of them dons Lucatiel's set, another dons Havel's, and a third dons Alva's. They actually mismatch these sets. For example, I think Lucatil is wearing bits of the Thief set, and Alva is wielding katanas. So what's the deal with these NPCs? Well, I think they're meant to represent the grave robbers of the Sunken Kingdom, and it looks like they've mismatched a bunch of legendary armors along their journey. And honestly, to think of any other possibilities is just so lore-breaking that I'm not even going to bother. I mean, these obviously aren't the actual NPCs. Not going to bother with that one. Grave robbers are a part of the DLC's environment, and we find open chests throughout the entire place. Another notable thing is the discovery of Flynn's ring. So Flynn was an infamous thief who utilized the power of the wind. Even the most skilled warriors in the land failed to capture him, and his presence, or lack of it, in the Sunken Kingdom is definitely noteworthy. The last NPC we find is Ilana's mirrored version of Velstadt. I simply think that this is a replica of Velstadt, as Velstadt, the actual one, most definitely resides in the crypt due to his item descriptions. My take on it is that Ilana must be aware of the King's Hand Velstadt, and she takes it upon herself to give herself a depraved replica made up of muck and slime. Some people think that it's Raim, who is Velstadt's brother, but I think this makes little sense because he's literally identical to the Velstadt we see in the crypt, and Raim used a shield emblazoned with a raven. So, now that we've covered all the major plot points of the DLC, I want to delve into the most interesting speculation that I've found. I think I'm going to have to keep the border on permanently for all of these. They're super fun to think about, but a lot of it is speculation. First, the 7 Deadly Sins. The 7 Deadly Sins are a set of Christian vices that have been used in a wide range of media, and some like to think that they're being used in the Dark Souls universe. I kinda think this is equal parts lame and equal parts cool at the same time. The sins are lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride. And with the Sunken Crown DLC, we've reason to believe that they might be being used as defining characteristics of the queens, and even the wider cast of characters in Dark Souls 2, so let's match them. Vendrick describes Nashandra as a being of insatiable lust. Her entire being is desire incarnate, as she was the fragment of Manus that, precisely due to its size, was the first to restore its form, so basically, her desire is everything that she is. And another word for desire is lust, in this case. Ilana's soul describes her as a being of wrath. Her dialogue is definitely more venomous than her sister's, and she is waiting for the day of vengeance, so wrath fits Ilana. This leaves 5 more sins, so it's possible that we'll meet another queen who fits another sin, as the queens are supposedly the fragments of Manus that represent humanity's true form. But this would still leave a few sins, so for the purpose of speculation and fun, I'm just going to fit the other sins to characters. Seath would be envy, as he was envious of his immortal brothers. The serpents of Dark Souls 1 would be gluttony, as the serpent is a symbol of gluttony. Gluttony can also be interpreted as selfishness, and the serpents in Dark Souls 1 absolutely manipulate the chosen undead to fulfill their own needs. Sin, the slumbering dragon, could represent sloth, for obvious reasons, as sloth means tired, sleepy, lazy. Vendrick would be pride, which is the most original and most deadly of the sins, and it's also the source of all the others. He was obsessed by Drangleic and his own power, and he was so obsessed that he failed to notice what was going on around him, and this is an element of pride. It also emphasizes contempt for one's neighbor, and Vendrick definitely had this. He stole the crowns from other kings, and he invaded the land of the giants on the slightest provocation. This leaves greed. I can't think of many characters to fit this, so perhaps it's the trait of another queen. I don't necessarily think these links are true, but it's interesting to think about. At the very least, these traits definitely exist inside the characters' personalities, and that's just good for storytelling reasons, so yeah. Speaking of queens though, at the end of my Prepare to Cry episode I imply that the Emerald Herald may well be our own queen. My reasoning for this is that every previous king of Drangleic appears to have a queen that usurps their efforts at the very end. These queens are fragments of Manus, and they're likely taking a female form because dusk was the last thing Manus saw, or captured, before he dissipated. We, the chosen undead, are someone who seeks to link the fire, just like Vendrick was inclined to, so it's not that strange to imagine that we could have a queen of our own, and it would be a pretty incredible twist to the game if it were true. There's a lot going for this idea. It even ties into what I said about the 7 deadly sins. What if the Emerald Herald represents greed? Throughout the entire game, we're giving her souls in order for her to power us up. We know that Ilana is gathering souls, so what if the Herald is doing the same with the souls that we give her? It's also interesting to consider a lot of her dialogue. In a different context, a lot of it is really sinister. I've probably convinced a few of you to go and kill her right now, but there's also a few arguments to be made against the Herald. Most notably, in the lore, she is a child of the dragon. This is said in the description of the Aged Feather, but also by the Herald herself. For our theory to be true, she would A. have to be lying, B. not be a child of Manus, but still be our queen, because cycles dictate that every king of light has one, or C. maybe she's a child of the dragon, but still a fragment of Manus somehow. There are definitely some links between the dragons and the dark, most notably that Dark Diver Grandal uses a dragon talisman with his dark hexes. In the end though, sometimes there's real value to be gained from simply thinking something might be true, rather than whether it's actually true, and that's why I dropped this idea into the video. Let's finish by talking about the dragons. The ancient dragon is worth talking about, because for whatever reason, he has direct links to Sin, the slumbering dragon of the DLC. The gigantic dragon has the soul of a giant, not the soul of an ancient dragon. He also resides in Aldia's Keep, a place where experimentation is a key theme. In the Eyrie, we find links to Sin that make me think that Sin came before the ancient dragon. So, deep within, we find a petrified egg, the description of which states, "Eggs are vessels that harbour life itself, and symbolize the deepest secrets of existence. But what does a petrified egg harbour?" Behind the egg is a mural depicting an ancient civilization and the dragon they worshipped. This is a mural also found deep within the sunken city, and it represents Sin, the slumbering dragon. If you take this speculation as far as it goes, you could surmise that Vendrick stole an egg from the sleeping dragon and used it to help him create his own dragon. You could also surmise that maybe the mural didn't have its origin in the depths, and that maybe it's found everywhere because it's really popular. I'm a bit stumped on this one, so let me know what you think. That's it though. To reiterate, you should check out this video if you haven't already. I'm pretty happy with it. There's a great story to be told in the Sunken City, so feel free to rate the video. Let me know what you thought. Follow me on Patreon, Twitter. I'll see you later. Bye.